wiping out a city of 6 million in a holocaust of flame.
Godzilla, the monstrous creation of Japanese film technology, has wreaked havoc across movie screens for almost half a century. As a star of films, television, and even comic books, he's the most famous prehistoric animal of all time.
Godzilla has a brain about this size. He is sheer brute force.
This monster put monstrous into the film vocabulary. Godzilla is bigger and more destructive than any of his counterparts. At 400 feet in height, he towers over all other movie monsters in both size and strength, and his breath can literally stop a clock, even Big Ben.
Godzilla seems to be winning. Don't lose!
Atomic proliferation was a sweep in the nations when along came a dude with a monstrous attitude. A giant of a romper, he's the greatest roaring stomper of Japan, or any land. He's a killer, baby. Gojira! He's Godzilla, baby. He can stomp Tokyo flat, cause he wears a stomping crown. Even more, much more than that, he can destroy Detroit town. He can lower the bridge on London, then after all his fun's done, you can smell the yucky, slimy stench of death. He will give the French an eyeful as he smacks the Tower Eiffel with his radioactive breath. He will refry Mexico City, nothing he does is pretty. He can smoke 'em out of old Los Angeles. When this monster comes around, better head for higher ground, cause he can crush everything he sees. He don't do drugs, he don't do sex, the Monstersaurus Rex is what he is, what he does. He's a slam bam, watch out man, fire-breathing monster. He goes just where he wants to, he's a killer, baby. Gojira! He's Godzilla, baby.
Yes, Godzilla is truly king of the monsters. Whence came this crown prince? What is the ancestry that culminated in his reign of terror? Japan has long been considered a place of exotic beauty. The soft lines of Japanese art and the delicacy of Japanese architecture have epitomized beauty to outsiders in the West. But the land of the rising sun erupted with violence in 1941, when Japanese planes attacked the United States territory of Hawaii. After the bombing of Pearl Harbor, Admiral Yamamoto observed, "We have awakened a sleeping giant." 4 years of intense fighting culminated in the dropping of 2 atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The Japanese had indeed awakened a sleeping giant. The entire nation of Japan would be forever aware of the destructive power of the atom. In 1954, fears of H-bomb testing in the Pacific produced a new mythology in Japan, the myth of Godzilla. Godzilla the dinosaur lay asleep in an underwater grotto since the primeval age. Reawakened by a hydrogen bomb blast, Godzilla reacted with ferocious anger. The power of the atomic bomb unleashed the power of a prehistoric beast upon the modern world.
Raging through the streets on a rampage of total destruction.
Roaring and loaded with radioactivity, the dinosaur ravaged Tokyo, leveling the city in the same manner that the blast which spawned him would have. Godzilla emerged in the mid-50s as a symbol of the potential evils of atomic power. Japan, famous for its transistors and miniaturization techniques, went the opposite direction with Godzilla. This monstrous dinosaur towered high above the Tokyo skyline, a most ominous sight, the like of which the Japanese hadn't seen since the atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki a decade earlier. Was this creature some sort of cathartic healing device for the Japanese, the only nation in the world to know firsthand the devastation of nuclear war? Whether it healed their war wounds, the film definitely filled their pocketbooks, making a lot of money for the Toho movie company. All around the world, audiences lined up to buy tickets to see the one and only Godzilla, the first radioactive lizard in history. Japan had an export that was really making some money. Godzilla was the brainchild of producer Tomoyuki Tanaka and director Inoshiro Honda. Serious filmmakers, both of them, over the years they often associated with Akira Kurosawa on many of his illustrious films. This duo set out to make a movie about the biggest dinosaur ever. The expertise of special effects wizard Eiji Tsuburaya came to their aid. Not only did they want him to be big, but they wanted to make Godzilla as realistic as possible. Although the monster was little more than a man in a rubber suit, through intricate sculpturing of the design, the creature appeared believable enough. Use of low camera angles helped to emphasize the illusion of enormity. The starkness of the black and white photography helped to set the somber mood of doom and destruction. The miniature sets through which Godzilla rampaged were meticulously constructed. All the action was filmed using a speeded-up camera, so that, when projected, Godzilla's movements would appear lumbering and heavy. Godzilla was the Americanization of the name Gojira. Actually, the dinosaur originally had no name in the film. The story is that the name Gojira came from a man who worked at the Toho studio. He himself was a tough-looking man, and the name seemed perfect for the dinosaur. The casting of Raymond Burr was another change in the American release of the film. The distributors thought that American audiences wouldn't identify with the film without an American actor playing a lead role. Whether or not Raymond Burr's presence helped the film, the movie certainly gave his career a boost.
Putting this park down until further notice.
What good is that going to do?
All I know is a couple of gorillas around here, and one of them is a killer.
Previously, Burr portrayed mainly villains. With his performance, as news reporter Steve Martin, producers saw the actor in a new light. Shortly thereafter, Burr was cast in the title role of the long-running television series Perry Mason. Altogether, the film artisans triumphed, and the film inspired a raft of sequels. As the economy in Japan flourished and exports were on the rise, Godzilla re-emerged, not as a villain, but as a friendly folk hero and the idol of children. Godzilla games and toys flooded the marketplace. There were comic books and record albums of stories featuring Godzilla and his exploits. But Godzilla didn't just pop out of the sea one day. Even the biggest monsters have to start somewhere. Godzilla's story actually dates back to a time before movies began. To learn the whole story, we must go back in time. Even further than the dawn of man. Before the Ice Age. Almost to the beginning of time itself. Aside from the entertainment they provide in movies, dinosaurs also have a place in history. More accurately, prehistory. Dinosaurs actually walked the Earth millions of centuries ago, during the Mesozoic era, which lasted from about 230 to 65 million years BC. For 165 million years, the dinosaurs ruled the Earth. The word dinosaur is derived from the ancient Greek and literally means terrible lizard. Dinosaurs were monstrous beasts, but not quite as large as the movie makers would have us believe. Although Godzilla towers over all the other movie dinosaurs, had he actually existed, he would have dwarfed the real dinosaurs as well. While it's true that the Tyrannosaurus Rex was bigger than a house, the largest T-Rex was only about 40 feet long. The fossil remains of the largest dinosaur discovered so far belong to the Seismosaurus, measuring about 128 to 170 feet in length. Scientists measure dinosaurs in length, snout to tail. Godzilla measures out at 400 feet, more than twice the size of any known dinosaur. These giant animals ruled over the planet for a long time. Their reign is divided into three periods: the Triassic, the Jurassic, and the Cretaceous. Consequently, many of the most famous dinosaurs lived in completely different eras. Although movie audiences have grown accustomed to battles between such monsters as the Triceratops and the Allosaurus, these animals actually lived millions and millions of years apart. Allosaurus lived during the Jurassic period, while Triceratops came along during the late Cretaceous period. One variety of dinosaur would die out and be replaced by another. Eventually, all the dinosaurs were gone. No one knows for certain what caused the dinosaurs to die out. There are several theories. One theory suggests that a giant meteor collided with the Earth, causing drastic changes in the climate. Other theorists believe the reasons are many and varied, and that the death of the dinosaurs occurred over many centuries. Scientists consider lung cancer an unlikely cause of the demise of dinosaurs. Whatever the reason, dinosaurs and man are separated in time. Although motion pictures show man pitted against dinosaurs, either in prehistory or modern times, there is no proof that the two species ever coexisted. Man did not appear on Earth for about 60 million years after the last of the dinosaurs had died out. Long ago, people believed the bones of dinosaurs to be those of fearsome dragons. Since many dinosaur remains were found at extremely high elevations, people believed that some dragons could fly. Fairy tales and folk legends abound with dragons. From the Germanic stories of Siegfried and the Ring of the Nibelungs to the magical Arabian Nights, the roar of dragons held readers spellbound. Although movie makers delight in exploring the possibilities of confrontations between man and dinosaur, long before motion picture cameras started to roll,
Once upon a time,
storytellers and novelists populated their literary works with prehistoric beasts. Nor was the theatrical stage ignored. In Mozart's opera, The Magic Flute, a ferocious dragon pursues the hero. The dragon does a comic turn, setting the stage for the fun and frolic yet to come. According to British folk legend, a gallant knight by the name of St. George fought a ferocious dragon. He also rescued a fair damsel. This Beauty and the Beast combination continued throughout literature and into the movies as well. Legends of dragons persisted throughout the Middle Ages. Even in later times, sailors would return from long ocean voyages with stories of sea serpents. And even to this day, there are residents of Scotland who believe that a dinosaur lives in Loch Ness. The study of prehistoric life is called paleontology. A relatively recent science, it began about 1822 with the first recorded findings of dinosaur remains in Sussex, England. Paleontologists pointed to the dinosaurs as an explanation for the legendary dragons. Although fossils had undoubtedly been observed earlier, this marked the first scientific study. With that endorsement, serious literature began examining the scientific dinosaurs. As early as his second novel, Jules Verne wrote of a team of explorers meeting dinosaurs on a journey to the center of the Earth. Some 80 years before Michael Crichton's Lost World, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle wrote a novel entitled The Lost World. Doyle, the creator of Master Detective Sherlock Holmes, also created Master Scientist George Challenger. Professor Challenger was the first person to explore a place known as the Lost World. In this instance, it was a remote area of South America, where dinosaurs continued to thrive into the 20th century.
This is the greatest moment of your lives. There it is, directly ahead. A body of land uplifted by a volcanic eruption 100 million years ago. The land where monsters live.
These were no DNA clones, as in Jurassic Park. These were descendants of the original dinosaurs. The author of the Tarzan books, Edgar Rice Burroughs, found dinosaurs especially fascinating. He wrote a trilogy of books about the land that time forgot.
This was the day the 20th century met the primeval world face to face. American International presents The Land That Time Forgot, an astounding motion picture based on the book by Edgar Rice Burroughs, creator of Tarzan and the most thrilling science fiction stories ever written. Travel through an underwater passage and discover an awesome prehistoric world. Fight for your life against the terrifying creatures of a lost continent. Come face to face with primitive man and learn the secret of evolution, the land that time forgot. It's action, danger, and adventure on an epic scale. You will never forget Edgar Rice Burroughs' The Land That Time Forgot.
From time to time, Burroughs even had Tarzan battling dinosaurs.
What's the trouble, Mr. Hendricks? He stole this stallion. You're under arrest.
We must get that message.
My boy and Cheetah here.
Tarzan, they're gonna kill Connie. Look, Tarzan.
Get our riders. You mustn't escape and reach the Shikamiya.
With the advent of motion pictures, filmmakers quickly saw the cinematic possibilities of dragons and dinosaurs. Obviously photogenic, dragons found their niche in the fantasy films of the French movie pioneer Georges Méliès. Dinosaurs also arrived on the motion picture screen early in the history of cinema. The year was 1909. Comic strip artist Winsor McCay created one of the earliest cartoons, Gertie the dinosaur. Each and every frame of the motion picture had to be hand-drawn and photographed to create the illusion of movement. Kay would stand in front of a motion picture screen and have Gertie perform tricks on the screen. Audiences fell in love with the dinosaur. That love affair has continued through countless variations. After a slow start, things began to pick up for dinosaurs and dragons in the movies. The year 1924 saw 2 major dragons and 2 major slayers. A dragon straight out of the Arabian Nights saw the end of its day at the hands of the thief of Baghdad. Douglas Fairbanks Sr. brandished the sword of the conqueror and then flew off into the Arabian sunset on his flying carpet. The Siegfried legend also came to life on the motion picture screen in 1924. The saga of Siegfried dates back to the Middle Ages. The tales of the great Germanic hero formed the basis for Richard Wagner's operatic cycle, The Ring of the Nibelungs. Noted German director Fritz Lang got the chance to direct his first epic saga with Siegfried and its sequel, Kriemhild's Revenge. Siegfried slays the dragon, Fafnir, and then bathes in the dragon's blood. Legend says that bathing in the blood of a dragon will make the warrior invincible. The technicians utilized a full-scale mechanical dragon to create the fire-breathing Fafnir. This mechanical wonder was 70 feet in length, about half the size of Seismosaurus, the largest actual dinosaur. The enormous puppet required 24 technicians to make it drink, breathe fire, and bleed. Although crude by today's standards, the creature managed to convince audiences in 1924 that the dragon was real. Three-dimensional animation, also referred to as stop motion, gave life to the prehistoric animals of the hysterical 3 ages. Buster Keaton, as an amorous caveman, went out for a Sunday drive in this pre-Flintstone comedy. While he had little trouble taming a huge dinosaur, his ability to win himself a bride left something to be desired. Wallace Beery possessed everything a prehistoric woman could want: brawn and more brawn. By virtue of his outstanding ability, or withstanding ability, Beery won the competition. Three-dimensional animation is much like cartoon animation. Rubber, or sometimes clay models of animals or people, must be moved by hand in between exposures. Stop-motion animation was also employed to bring life to the denizens of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's The Lost World in 1925. Wallace Beery returned for a dinosaur encounter of a different kind, this time as the bearded Professor Challenger, leader of an intrepid group of explorers. The animation was the work of Willis O'Brien. An acknowledged master at his craft, O'Brien began animating clay models around 1914. A few shorts, such as The Dinosaur and the Missing Link, demonstrated the viability of model animation in creating lifelike characters. In RFD 10,000 BC, O'Brien explored the comic possibilities of three-dimensional animation with this novel method of mail delivery. These 1917 creations paved the way for the filming of The Lost World in 1925. O'Brien remained a dominant factor in special effects and three-dimensional animation for the next 3 decades. 70 years later, neophytes in the field would use his work as a visual textbook. Toward the end of The Lost World, a souvenir of the expedition gets out of hand. A rather large souvenir, the Brontosaurus, caused traffic problems in downtown London, where the term gridlock was completely unknown. Those were the days. Eight years later, in 1933, O'Brien would once again be called upon to create dinosaurs as well as the title character for the movie King Kong. In the film, which premiered at Grauman's Chinese Theater, Kong was billed as the eighth wonder of the world.
Kong, the eighth wonder of the world!
Because of the ingenuity used in creating the film, many feel the appellation is well-deserved, even after 60 years. Kong pursued lovely Fay Ray from Skull Island to New York City. Obviously, this beast had a big crush on this beauty. King Kong not only kept the RKO studios solvent, it was the sixth highest grossing film of the 1930s. Although Kong dies at the end of the picture, audiences demanded a sequel. Amazingly enough, a sequel, Son of Kong, was forthcoming before the year was out. Having a sequel come out the same year as the original is another of King Kong's feats that has not yet been equaled. But even when the 1930s ended, Kong's movie career was not finished. Fans demanded more. After all, he was the biggest star in monster movies at that time. His followers knew that he was far from perfect. Everyone has a few bad habits. But his fans loved Kong just the same. The giant ape met the king of dinosaurs in King Kong vs. Godzilla in 1963. Although made by Toho Productions of Japan, this film was actually the idea of Willis O'Brien. His script, King Kong vs. Frankenstein, made the rounds of producers since the 1930s. Eventually, it was sold to the Japanese, who reworked the story to feature their most famous monster. It was a title bout to be reckoned with. While sports fans clamored for ringside seats when Cassius Clay KO'd Sonny Liston, audiences preferred to see the two monsters slug it out from the comfort of a theater seat.
Godzilla has a brain about this size. He is sheer brute force. While Kong is a thinking animal. His brain is considerably larger, about 10 times the size of this gorilla's skull. Being instinctive rivals, there is no doubt that they will attempt to destroy one another.
King Kong vs. Godzilla scored a knockout. The Japanese continued to feature both monsters in films over the next few years. Kong even battled a giant robot ape in King Kong Escapes. King Kong appeared in a variety of stories totally unrelated to each other or anything that had gone before. After Kong's splendid appearance in the 30s, dinosaurs came from every direction. Comic strips depicted the Stone Age adventures of Alley-Oop and his pet dinosaur. But the creatures weren't limited to the prehistoric era or even the planet Earth. Flash Gordon met up with dinosaurs in outer space. Buster Crabbe, the Olympic swimmer, came to movie prominence as Tarzan of the Apes, but he didn't get to tangle with dinosaurs until he reached the planet Mongo, the domain of Ming the Merciless. It became common practice to use lizards to portray dinosaurs on the motion picture screen. Lizards don't really look like dinosaurs, but they're willing to work for scale. Movie studios figured their unsophisticated audiences wouldn't know the difference. The decade ended and the next one began, with dinosaurs aplenty. Yes, dinosaurs were popular, all right, but not many big stars possessed the courage to co-star with a prehistoric animal.
Well, thanks. Now come on, I'm famished.
An actor had to be crazy to appear on screen with animals, or be an animal and crazy at the same time, like, for instance, Daffy Duck. Oscar winner Chuck Jones directed Daffy Duck and the Dinosaur in 1939. Audiences are still laughing to this day. But the duck had the last laugh. Nobody remembers who played the dinosaur. Rising costs of animation caused Hal Roach to use costumed animals in his prehistoric saga, 1 million BC. Fur coats were draped on elephants, giving them the appearance of woolly mammoths. As for the dinosaurs, lizards doubled for these prehistoric monsters. Little or no makeup was required. However, the results were impressive, and the film received an Oscar nomination for special effects. The animal actors were such a success that footage from the film found its way into countless films since. The movie had no dialogue. The story was told in grunts and pantomime. Much of the success of this technique is attributed to the rumor that D.W. Griffith co-directed the film. Whether or not this is true, the film credits only Hal Roach and Hal Roach Jr. as directors. That same year, Walt Disney and Leopold Stokowski joined forces for Fantasia.
We're all one big happy family.
Like Gertie, many years before, these were animated cartoon dinosaurs, but their realism was astounding. The Disney artists created a panorama of the evolution of life on Earth during the primeval period. Igor Stravinsky's The Rite of Spring provided the dramatic musical background. Though the film was not successful in 1940, constant reissues turned Fantasia into a popular classic. In 1977, Allegro non troppo satirized Fantasia. The dinosaurs were back in animated form, but this time humor rather than drama was the impetus.
Up in the sky, look! It's a bird! It's a plane! It's Superman!
Animation dramatized the action when Superman leapt from the comic pages to capture the Arctic giant in 1942. The Fleischer brothers were faithful to the spirit of Superman, but their knowledge of paleontology left something to be desired.
Now this time, stay put.
Yes, my lord, and thanks.
Actually, the dinosaur bears more than a passing resemblance to the reluctant dragon being filmed across town at the Disney Studios, the cartoon rival of the Fleischer brothers. 10 years later, the live-action motion picture cameras turned back to the dinosaurs with The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. Loosely based on Ray Bradbury's short story, The Foghorn, the film featured a dinosaur on the loose in the big city. Although a dinosaur in the streets figured prominently in the climax of the original Lost World film, this movie owes more to King Kong. Furthermore, The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, more so than any other film, was both the precursor and the inspiration for Godzilla.
You know what a radioactive isotope is?
No, but if it can be loaded, I can fire it.
I'll load it. Just remember one thing. This is the only isotope of its kind this side of Oak Ridge, so you can't miss.
The special effects were created by stop-motion animator Ray Harryhausen, who had worked closely with Willis O'Brien on the stop-motion classic Mighty Joe Young. Harryhausen and O'Brien again joined forces on The Animal World. O'Brien built the models, while Harryhausen animated. It was their only collaboration on a color film. Dinosaurs only played a supporting role in this documentary produced by Irwin Allen, long before he became the disaster movie king. Robot Monster could be found at the other end of the special effects spectrum, although who would want to find it will forever remain a mystery. The ape in the diving helmet came from outer space. The dinosaurs came from stock footage, the plot came from nowhere, and went nowhere. The only thing frightening about this film is the thought that anyone could have taken it seriously.
There is no escape from me. Fool humans, there is no escape.
Godzilla came along the following year, just in the nick of time.
Armageddon is here today because Godzilla is on the way. Look out, world, you'd better run, cause ready or not, here he comes. He don't do drugs, he don't do sex. The Monstersaurus Rex is what he is, and what he does. He's a slam bam, watch out man, fire-breathing monster. He goes just where he wants to. He's a killer, baby. He's Godzilla, baby. Forget vanilla, baby. He is green, he is mean, a destruction machine. He's a killer, baby. He's Godzilla, baby. He's a killer, baby. He's Godzilla.
Godzilla, king of the monsters, alive, surging up from the depths of the sea on a tidal wave of terror to wreak vengeance on mankind.
Godzilla, king of the monsters.
See Godzilla, king of the monsters.
You may wish to deny it, but your eyes tell you it's true.
A tale to stun the mind.
Dynamic violence.
Savage action.
Spectacular thrills.
Godzilla, king of the monsters.
Fantastic beyond comprehension.
Gripping beyond compare.
Astounding beyond belief.
The mightiest monster of them all.
See Godzilla, king of the monsters.
Bursting triumphantly onto the movie screen, the Japanese dinosaur found his triumph short-lived. His first film was well received, but Godzilla's return engagement didn't fare too well. The U.S. title Gigantus the Fire Monster probably didn't help. Godzilla spearheaded the Japanese invasion into the international market, but reinforcements were far behind. But while Godzilla hibernated for the second half of the 50s, American dinosaurs continued to cause stampedes at the box office.
Hold it! Looks like there's been a big struggle around here. Cattle tracks go all directions. See?
No one has dared to come this far. Let's turn back.
You're too superstitious, Benwell. You're afraid of your own shadow.
Not my shadow, senor. It's the shadow of that cursed mountain.
Cowboy star Guy Madison confronted the Beast of Hollow Mountain, a dinosaur from south of the border down Mexico way. Patricia Medina portrayed the beauty in this film. Like Guy Madison, Jock Mahoney was known for his TV cowboy roles. The Land Unknown gave him a chance to tangle with dinosaurs in 1957. But there was no roping in this variation on The Lost World. No doubt the jungle experience helped Mahoney prepare for his two-picture stint as Tarzan in the 1960s. Japan rejoined the prehistoric parade with Rodan, unleashed that same year. A flying reptile capable of supersonic speeds, Rodan knocked over whatever parts of Japan Godzilla had left standing. Although the photography lacked the sinister aspect of Godzilla's stark black and white, the colors in Rodan were muted, and the use of color did not detract from the impressive special effects. Rodan soared over Japan, and the box office receipts soared as well. The same behind-the-scenes team provided Varan, the Unbelievable. Japanese audiences didn't believe it either. Several years passed before the film was exported overseas. As with Godzilla, an American star was added, but Myron Healy's star was not in the ascendant. His presence added little to the box office appeal. The United States answered with the giant claw, a prehistoric bird.
It's got one of the planes. It's coming after me.
It looked more like one of the Muppets than anything else.
The bird's after us, chasing us. How are you doing? For God's sake, hurry, man. It's catching up with us fast.
Audiences avoided this turkey like the plague, while a plague of locusts caught their attention.
May be witnessing the beginning of an era that'll mean the complete annihilation of man.
Annihilation?
The beginning of the end.
The beginning of the end heralded neither the beginning nor the end of giant monsters.
Hold on!
This film exemplified the creative forces in U.S. science fiction movies at the time. Quick to realize their strong suits, American filmmakers turned their cameras to other kinds of radioactive menaces. Overgrown insects swarmed across movie screens throughout the 1950s. Starting with them, a plethora of movie insects flitted and buzzed with radioactive fury.
We may be witnesses to a biblical prophecy come true, and there shall be destruction and darkness come upon creation, and the beast shall reign over the earth.
But what if circumstances were to magnify one of them in size and strength, took it out of its primitive world and turned it loose in ours? Then expect something that's fiercer, more cruel and deadly than anything that ever walked the earth.
The Air Force is standing by with an atom bomb. You can't drop an atom bomb on Chicago.
What if Philippe does not have the mind of a human, but the murderous brain of the fly?
The deadly mantis featured a prehistoric insect, and a big one at that. William Hopper, Raymond Burr's associate on the Perry Mason television series, played the entomologist who sets out to rid the world of yet another giant pest.
In all the kingdom of the living, there is no more deadly or voracious creature than the praying mantis.
Radiation and mutation became the buzzwords of Hollywood. No sooner had the insects had their say when people began mutating.
The colossal man is loose in Los Angeles.
Look! Look at the giant! Giants! Giants!
Radio-activated giants symbolized the fear of nuclear proliferation felt by many Americans.
What that made that trend is about 10 times the size of a normal man.
Nuclear energy, once likened to a genie released from his bottle, evoked feelings of uncontrollable ferocity in a larger-than-economy size.
Artie, what's happened? So big. What happened? What made him grow?
Glenn Manning is growing from 8 to 10 feet a day.
We can't find him anywhere on the ground.
Incredibly huge. Drive it in hard. We have to penetrate the bone in the first step.
Look out, he's reaching down!
We want to help you to get well.
Do you still love me?
From the tip of your toes to the top of your head.
I don't want to grow anymore.
I
I said, claw!
The Cyclops featured magnified lizards, not as dinosaurs, but as giant lizards. Of course, radiation caused their accelerated growth rate. Lizards were back to playing dinosaurs in 1958's Teenage Caveman. Modern man pitted against ancient beasts was big trouble indeed, but ancient man had his share of problems as well. Young Robert Vaughn made one of his earliest screen appearances in the title role of Teenage Caveman. Bad acting from his lizard supporting players marred an otherwise serious film about life in prehistoric times. England got into the act at decade's end with The Curse of the Demon. Druid magic conjured up a sort of hairy dragon, but the beast only made a brief appearance. A dragon received more screen time in The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, courtesy of animator Ray Harryhausen.
Kill him.
This became Harryhausen's first solo effort in color. The British monster movies really made an impact when the giant behemoth stomped all over London. Once again, Willis O'Brien was the man behind the magic.
Gentlemen, we are witnessing a biological chain reaction, a geometrical progression of deadly mass.
As with Godzilla, the behemoth was a radioactive beast, and it certainly kept the English population active. Jules Verne's 1864 novel, Journey to the Center of the Earth, arrived on the CinemaScope screen in 1959. James Mason played the leader of a quartet of intrepid explorers cavorting amid the beauties of Carlsbad Caverns. The story remained a Victorian scientific romance, with current heartthrob Pat Boone joining the expedition to attract the younger crowd.
It's unthinkable, but it must be true. A man took some tools and went where no human being had ever set foot. Alone. Went into the interior of the earth.
It worked, making the film one of the biggest box office hits of the decade. Producers scoured the libraries for more novels by Jules Verne, easily the most popular author in Hollywood at that time. His novel Off on a Comet presented challenges and opportunities, but a lackluster production and low budget met few of the challenges and missed many an opportunity. Retitled Valley of the Dragons, the film appeared briefly and then disappeared into oblivion.
Whatever it was has thrown the Earth into a new orbit.
No, this whole thing is unbelievable.
Dinosaurs, borrowed from 1 million BC, the movie, not the year, helped very little. The same fate awaited Professor Challenger and company when they revisited Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Lost World in the 1960 Irwin Allen remake.
For me, this story started 3 years ago when Burton White came to me. He told me of how in some Indian village out here in the jungle, he'd met a fever-stricken white man who babbled on about a plateau with monsters and diamonds.
No stop motion was employed. Again, the dinosaurs were magnified lizards. Although photographed in color and CinemaScope, a lizard is still a lizard. Despite the lizards, dinosaurs and folkloric dragons were now international.
Goliath meets the fire-breathing, man-eating, three-headed dog of darkness. No man could match Goliath's might.
America's first primetime animated TV series, The Flintstones, provided audiences with a new slant on prehistoric life. Fred and Wilma Flintstone lived in luxury in the modern Stone Age city of Bedrock. The legend of St. George came to life in 1962's The Magic Sword. Gary Lockwood essayed the role of the mythical dragon slayer. Lovely Anne Helm portrayed the beauty and the object of the beast's fatal attraction. Burt Gordon, who a few years earlier created giant grasshoppers to invade Chicago, now turned his talents to creating a giant dragon. Basil Rathbone, as an evil sorcerer, held the dragon's leash.
Let no man face my 7 curses and reach the dragon's lair.
There was something rotten in the state of Denmark.
It's a piece of skin, like leather.
It turned out to be a dinosaur named Reptilicus. Denmark suffered the same fate as Tokyo and London when Reptilicus came to town in 1962. The 1960s found more and more fantasy and science fiction films being produced in color. Use of color made fairy tale subjects especially attractive to film producers and audiences alike. The story of Jack and the Beanstalk combined with a bit of swashbuckling to create Jack the Giant Killer. Obviously inspired by the success of The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, the film even boasted the same star, Kerwin Matthews, who became very adept at fighting imaginary beasts. George Pal gave life to another fairy tale dragon in The Wonderful World of the Brothers Grimm. Comedian Buddy Hackett was the dragon slayer. Jim Danforth was the dragon animator. Spectacular special effects dominated the film.
To whack with a tack and a hammer, your eyes light up and your heart goes boom,
But the costumes won the Oscar. According to the Chinese, 1964 ushered in the Year of the Dragon. Hollywood agreed. George Pal followed the story of the Brothers Grimm with The Seven Faces of Dr. Lo. Tony Randall portrayed the Chinese conjurer and all the other attractions in this magical circus.
A genuine bona fide sea serpent. In the water, he is small, insignificant, petite. But out of the water, and he doubles his size every 10 seconds until he reaches his full growth.
One of the faces, a tiny fish inside a small fishbowl, grew to become the enormous Loch Ness monster.
Oh, I got him! Oh, I got him! Oh, that's showbiz!
Hi there. Do I look familiar to you?
What in the world is a Medusa?
A Medusa, dear heart, is a creature with snakes on her head. And if you look at her face, you turn to stone.
I'll show her!
Another brilliant example of special effects from George Pal and Company couldn't capture the Oscar. But the equally brilliant makeup by William Tuttle did. The Japanese had their share of dragons, too. A sea serpent attacked the super submarine in Atragon. No matter what fantastic beasts distracted the Japanese filmmakers, they always returned to the king of the monsters. Appearances of the earlier films on American television rekindled interest in the Japanese monsters in the 1960s. In an effort to attract an even greater audience in the U.S., Godzilla squared off against the American giant King Kong. It was a battle royal, King Kong versus Godzilla. The two monsters broke down every barrier, even the language barrier.
We can't let King Kong sink the ship.
No, I won't allow King Kong to be blown up. What would our sponsors say?
Hey, Taco!
Neither monster needed an interpreter. Actions speak louder than words. This time, the filmmakers decide to have some fun with the monsters, poking satiric jabs at the merchandising, which later became a dominant factor in motion pictures made in the U.S.
What a great advertisement. King Kong taking Pacific drug products with a great big smile.
You mean King Kong's gonna be smiling?
Ah, if we ask him nicely.
Godzilla occupies an unusual place among movie monsters. After leveling Tokyo in his first film, Godzilla returned as a folk hero for almost 24 sequels. And Godzilla underwent his own evolution. The passage of time modified both his appearance and his demeanor. Mothra is also a bit out of the ordinary. While not a dinosaur or even a prehistoric beast, she figures prominently in the Godzilla saga. Of all the Japanese giants, Mothra differs on 2 counts. First, Mothra is a female. Secondly, her first film appearance ranks as a fairy tale rather than a science fiction story. The giant moth just exists, but not as the result of some radioactive mutation. She is simply a mythical creature summoned to aid the Peanut Sisters when they're captured by a gangster hoping to capitalize on them as a sideshow attraction. The 60s certainly saw a rebirth for Godzilla, who next duked it out with newcomer Mothra in Godzilla vs. the Thing. Basically a benevolent creature, Mothra wins out over Godzilla. Then Godzilla and Rodan joined forces with good girl Mothra to battle Ghidorah, the 3-headed monster. By the mid-60s, the Japanese now hailed Godzilla and Rodan as heroes rather than villains. Now a family dinosaur, Godzilla spent much of his time raising his son and cavorting with his friends on Monster Island. Godzilla and cousin Rodan continued to rock Japan and the rest of the universe steadily from 1965 to 1975. All of Toho's major players turned out for a slugfest in Destroy All Monsters.
I would say nobody has anything to fear from us. But we are going to control you now.
Ghidorah remained the only monster in their stable who never managed to be on the right side of the law. 2 heads may be better than 1, but 3 heads evidently creates a very unbalanced dragon. Toho's rival Daiei countered with Gamera the Invincible, a fire-breathing, jet-propelled prehistoric flying turtle.
Attention everyone! Take cover!
Despite 6 sequels and a huge following for the challenger, Godzilla retained his crown. Director Inoshiro Honda gave Godzilla a little rest in 1966, turning to another famous monster. Frankenstein Conquers the World presented a gigantic version of the classic monster battling yet another prehistoric beast. This Frankenstein monster didn't conquer the world, but he certainly made a mess of Tokyo and environs. As the dust settled in Japan, the British remade 1 million BC. They added color and the word years to their version. Again, primitive man fought dinosaurs in a fantasy filled with scientific anachronisms. This time out, most of the dinosaurs were animated using the stop-motion technique, although a few lizards made guest appearances. Perhaps the Lizard Union protested. Despite some fine work by effects expert Ray Harryhausen, 1 million years BC is most notable for introducing movie audiences to Raquel Welch. The lovely lady wore blonde hair and little else. A few years later, the same producer and director team presented a more accurate portrayal of primitive men and women in Creatures the World Forgot, with nary a dinosaur in sight. Meanwhile, animator Ray Harryhausen followed one dinosaur epic with another.
It's Spears! It's Spears!
Actually a project envisioned by Harryhausen's mentor, Willis O'Brien, Valley of Gwangi was released by Warner Brothers in 1969. Cowboys wrangling a dinosaur roundup combined two popular genres, the cowboy picture and the monster picture.
Professor, there's a big lizard back there and he's heading this way. Now get aboard!
James Franciscus was the lead wrangler, but as usual, the dinosaur was the star. 1970 found the Japanese looking for new and improved monsters. There was no question that Yog, the monster from space, was new. But was this an improvement?
You are powerless against me.
Space monster or not, he still did battle with some kind of dinosaur. That same year, Czechoslovakian director Karel Zeman filmed a remake of Jules Verne's novel Off on a Comet as On the Comet. Predominantly a maker of children's films, Zeman employed a novel approach to his films, combining both live action and animation in a far from realistic environment. Dinosaurs were also added to the mix, as had been done previously in the Columbia version of the novel Valley of the Dragons. In 1971, when dinosaurs ruled the Earth ruled the movie screens as well. Attention to detail enhanced the oft-filmed saga of dinosaurs and cavemen. Jim Danforth's animation created a realistic portrayal of prehistoric times, if you ignore the scientific inaccuracy. This film became only the second stop-motion animation film ever to be nominated for the Academy Award for Special Effects. It lost out to Disney's fantasy Bedknobs and Broomsticks. A new threat replaced atomic phobia in the 1970s. Pollution was rampant, and Godzilla joined the fight. Hedorah was the name of the new Japanese monster, a smokestack-sucking slab of slime straight out of the sludge. Godzilla went head-to-head with Hedorah in Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster.
More than 1,600 dead have been reported, while other casualties are expected to exceed 30,000.
No sooner had Godzilla defeated the smog-breathing Hedorah when the filmmakers called him into action again in Godzilla vs. Megalon. Being more of a traditional monster, Godzilla went the full 15 rounds, but scored a knockout in the end. Jet Jaguar, a robot, joined the fight on the side of truth, justice, and the Japanese way. Godzilla's less traditional fighting partner could change its size to accommodate whatever opponent came along. Audiences were tiring of the same old action, so Godzilla retired, still a champion. During this period, dinosaurs recycled faster than aluminum cans. Valley of the Dragons had utilized footage from 1 million BC, and a remake of King Kong was just around the corner. The new Kong kept dinosaur activity to a minimum and maximized the footage of Jessica Lange's beautiful body. After her film debut, many thought Lange should return to modeling. She has since been twice honored with the Academy Award.
You know, maybe my luck has changed.
After countless screen versions of the Tarzan stories, filmmakers now discovered other novels by Edgar Rice Burroughs. The Land That Time Forgot and its sequel, The People That Time Forgot, suffered budget cuts in the special effects department. The dinosaurs were mechanical and looked it, but the stories were still fun to watch. In the sequel, a dogfight between a pterodactyl and a World War I vintage biplane was a joy to behold. Caveman in 1981 offered fun of a different sort, with ex-Beatle Ringo Starr as the typical caveman of prehistoric times. Barbara Bach was the typical cave mate. The dinosaurs were anything but typical. This flair for comedy worked. With nostalgia all the rage, motion picture studios continued to reprise old favorites. Godzilla himself was resurrected once again for Godzilla 1985, a color remake of the original Godzilla film. Bad old Godzilla was at it again, tearing up Tokyo as in the original Japanese film, and Raymond Burr watched in awe in the badly dubbed American release of the film. No doubt the filmmakers hoped to appeal to a brand new audience as well as the baby boomers. At the same time, Dr. Pepper got product placement in the film and featured Godzilla in their TV advertising. The next major appearance by movie dinosaurs smashed box office records. Steven Spielberg's Jurassic Park and its sequel, The Lost World, were based on novels by Michael Crichton. In turn, Crichton's tales were inspired by two films from the early 1960s, Dinosaurus and Gorgo. Jurassic Park and its sequel presented the concept of cloning dinosaurs from prehistoric DNA. The plots were the real dinosaurs. Dinosaurus was released in 1960 by Universal Studios, the same company that would make prehistoric history with the Jurassic Park films 3 decades later. An island provided the setting. A Tyrannosaurus Rex provided the conflict. Of course, the obligatory friendly Brontosaurus was on hand, as well as a caveman. The trio had been preserved for millions of years in a block of ice. Universal Pictures served up this frozen entree in a serviceable but juvenile plot.
How do we get word out, Hacker? Mailboat will be in tomorrow morning. By tomorrow, we could all be dead.
Another juvenile warned of the perils of dinosaurs in the MGM production Gorgo.
I came to let him go back to the sea where he belongs.
Why?
Maybe to save your silly skins for you.
Hurry, hurry, hurry to see Gorgo.
As with the dinosaurs of Jurassic Park, Gorgo was put on display in an amusement park. The year was 1961, and interest in dinosaurs reached its peak. Piccadilly Circus really became a circus as the crowds turned out in droves. But Gorgo turned out to be an only child, and Mama Dinosaur came to the rescue. Like Godzilla did a few years earlier, Gorgo went on a rampage. The addition of color and a change in locale made little difference. It remained the same old roar and stomp. London suffered urban blight, and mother and child were finally reunited. The basic plot of Gorgo was lifted whole and transported to Costa Rica and San Diego, California for The Lost World, Jurassic Park. Admittedly, Steven Spielberg's dinosaur films possessed a lot of style and punch, but the fight was ages old. That same concept had been utilized in the first film version of Arthur Conan Doyle's The Lost World, way back in 1925. Ironically, in 1993, the same year as the film version of Jurassic Park, a remake of the Arthur Conan Doyle Lost World novel also appeared. John Rhys Davies, fresh from his outings as Indiana Jones' compatriot, essayed the role of Professor Challenger on this expedition. David Warner went along for star support. It didn't help. This version went straight to video, along with its sequel, Return to the Lost World. Even the scripts of dinosaur films seem to be fossils. Or perhaps the filmmakers are extracting DNA from earlier films and cloning newer dinosaur movies. Fossils or not, prehistoric animals have a strong appeal to the movie-going public. The legend and the tradition of Godzilla marches on. In a most unusual pairing, Bambi meets Godzilla paid homage to the Big Stomper. "40 years after the original film, producer Dean Devlin and director Roland Emmerich decided to do another remake of Godzilla. Devlin and Emmerich, the team behind the cameras on Independence Day, chose Matthew Broderick to lead the cast.
This is going to be a whole new experience. I just hope I'm up to it.
This third telling of the tale was filmed in America, with American actors, with the approval of Toho Productions, and without the bad dubbing. This time, the Japanese got to put up with the bad dubbing. Whether the creatures are shown frolicking in their natural habitats, or flattening Tokyo and devouring the residents, audiences continue to devour the dinosaur movies, proving that Godzilla and kin are alive and well in the hearts of movie lovers.
Atomic proliferation was a sweep in the nation when along came a dude with a monstrous attitude. A giant of a rampart, he's the greatest roaring stomper of Japan, or any land. He's a killer, baby. He's Godzilla, baby. He can stomp Tokyo flat, cause he wears a stomping crown. Even more, much more than that, he can destroy Detroit town. He can lower the bridge on London, and after all these fun's done, you can smell the yucky, slimy stench of death. He will give the French an eyeful as he smacks the Tower Eiffel with his radioactive breath. He will refry Mexico City, nothing he does is pretty. He can smoke him out of old Los Angeles. When this monster comes around, better head for higher ground, cause he can crush everything he sees. He don't do drugs, he don't do sex, the Monstersaurus Rex is what he is, what he does. He's a slam man, watch out man, fire-breathing monster. He goes just where he wants to. He's a killer, baby. He's Godzilla, baby. Armageddon is here today because Godzilla's on the way. Look out, world, you better run, cause ready or not, here he comes. He don't do drugs, he don't do sex. The Monstersaurus Rex is what he is, and what he does. He's a slam man, watch out man, fire-breathing monster. He goes just where he wants to. He's a killer, baby. He's Godzilla, baby. Forget vanilla, baby. He is green, he is mean, a destruction machine. He's a killer, baby. He's Godzilla, baby. He's a killer, baby. He's Godzilla, baby. He's Godzilla.